Okay, we're going to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. They have a really cool review for you guys from the brand Seiko. A little about them. They were founded back in 1881. They are Japanese in origin and have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end. And in terms of the type of watch, this falls under the kind of everyday watch category. Some key characteristics in design, which are looking for something you can wear every day. Of course, you're just going to want that versatile blend of both sporty and dressy attributes. Now, this is a really, really special model for you guys. And, you know, for me, it is a bit of a grail, and for some of you it might also be a grail. This is a neo vintage JDM Seiko Brightz SAGL003, and it's essentially an early 2000s piece with a truly unique combination of features and attributes to include full titanium construction, a no date enamel dial, and an 8L21 movement, which, you know, was essentially an undecorated and under-regulated variation of the Grand Seiko Caliber 9S. In terms of the values of these, you know, as I record this, as of Q1 of 2024, these are trending, you know, plus or minus, of course, a few $100 above or below around $2,000, depending on the condition as well as the location. I found this example from Instagram user JDM Watches for Sale, who even sourced an extra link, which is awesome. And yeah, I'm just in awe of this watch. Insanely excited to finally have it, you know, within the long-term core collection. And I'm really excited to share it with you guys. So with that said, let's go and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Ooh, okay guys, let's dive in. One of the first things about this watch, of course, apart from the general aesthetic, is going to be the actual dimensions. And there's a lot of mixed dimensions, especially, of course, around neo-vintage pieces that's out there, but I will let you know exactly you know, these are measurements from my own calipers, and I'll also let you even know where I took the measurement from. So here, I've seen it advertised as larger, but I will say when I measure it from this outer portion to, of course, where the crown starts, I get 38 millimeters. So for me, this is a 38 millimeter diameter watch. Of course, if you were to, like, let's say, measure it from the 2 to the 8, you're going to get a little bit of that flare out there, which is going to make it a little bit larger. So some people have measured these at closer to 40 or even 41 millimeters, depending on kind of how much that they are measuring off of the corners, you know, at the weird kind of farthest reaches of the watch. But you guys can see it also has a very small dial that is really nicely centered. So I will say, most of you, if you were to see this piece in person, you would say it's much smaller than I thought it would be. And you see it on my wrist, you guys are going to love that because it looks even smaller because I have a pretty decent sized wrist at 7.5 inches. Now, so it's a 38 millimeter diameter, 13 millimeters thick. You know, I've seen it advertised as thinner, but hey, I'm measuring it all put together with the crystals and everything, like I normally would when reviewing anything. So 13 millimeters thick, 46 millimeters lug to lug. Titanium, brushed and polished. It does have a dual curved sapphire crystal, which means that even at a very harsh angle there, still very legible, very clean, clear, very nice. So nice. I just need to dust it off every once in a while. That's how good it is. So, yeah, absolutely beautiful. And you guys can probably tell that deep black enamel dial after all of these years, you know, doesn't look like a brand new enamel dial. It does have a bit of its own character to it. You know, I know enamels, you know, it's not going to fade over time, but it can. And I think in this case, it has taken up just a slight notch, you know, from its very, very inky black dial. At certain angles, you can probably see and tell a little bit more, hey, well, this is, you know, a 20-plus-year-old watch. Although I will say that this condition is so immaculate. I mean, even to have these polished sections, a lot of the used models you'll see, these are already turned into brushed sections because they just can't keep that same luster after a lot of wear. And these were very wearable watches, still quite expensive out of Seiko's Brightz line. I mean, this was a time also when, Seiko, I'd say Grand Seiko by extension, was just coming back with mechanical movements for their watches. So, I mean, this was a very interesting time for Seiko. Now, another measurement to note is the bezel. Across the polished bezel, it's only 34.5 millimeters, right? So again, just take that in, and it's not always about the ultimate specs. A lot of it has to do, of course, the way a watch wears is going to be a lot to do with the design and ultimately the proportions of the watch. And I think this has beautiful proportions. It has a push-pull crown signed with the Brightz B, as you guys can see there. And the movement inside, which is actually, luckily for me, recently been serviced. Ooh, look at that. This is truly what they mean by when they say undecorated Grand Seiko movement, because yeah, it really is not decorated. If you look at some of the more modern 8L movements in Prospex watches of today, let me give this actually a quick wipe. A lot of the times they're actually going to be pretty well decorated. Bruce Williams had a great episode where he actually took the case back off of a Willard reissue of I think that was the SLA033. And it showed some really great, Tokyo striping and everything on there. You can see here, it's just a nice, clean satin, a very, very nice, clean satin. But hey, it's, not a lot of ornamental design. Again, in terms of that finishing, it's really, a hallmark of kind of what Seiko was about during that time. And they were very experimental when it came to designs. And that's where you see something like this. And the great thing about it is, man, this feels very Japanese. I mean, the curves, the angles. I mean, this is just a really, really beautiful kind of definitive piece. No date. As much as I love an enamel dial, a lot of times you'll see the date, the weird punch out, kind of the contours around the date window don't look as great. So it's nice to see that here. And then in terms of the movement, some things to note: 50-hour power reserve, 4 hertz beat rate. So that's 28,800 vibrations per hour. And the nice thing is it's an actual no date movement with the 8L21. So there's no ghost position or anything like that to report. Now getting into the dial, a couple more details. Let's bring it nice and close, nice and tight there. Ooh, yes, yes. Look at that. Glossy black enamel with that nice printed index, very clean, polished hands with actual curved down tips, as you guys can see on the hour and minute. So check that out. Look at that. I'm sorry, not that. Actually, yeah, I think the hour, minute, and the seconds maybe too. Look at the curvature on the seconds hand. It's easier to see. And the minute hand. And then maybe even the hour. But yeah, definitely on the minute and the seconds. And I believe the hour does have a... Let me know in the comments below if my eyes are tricking me. But yeah, it looks like they all have a beautiful curve down because the dial itself does have a bit of a curvature to it, which I think is nice. And again, it's just additional details. This watch is so full of details, even though it's a no-date watch with basic numerals, right? Printed dial. Somehow they found a way to make this feel really focused and extravagant kind of at the same time. So I just dig that. Now, in terms of the water resistance here, guys, 10 bar or 100 meters of water resistance, which is not uncommon for Seiko to do with a push-pull crown. As long as the crown is pushed in, you're good to go. In terms of the lugs, you're getting 20 millimeter lugs that are actually drilled, which is very nice. And then also, you're going to have this beautiful solid end link, right? Which for the time within this era, not every watch had solid end links, so that's pretty cool that they have these with solid end links. Solid links, and it's this really cool multi-link setup with a pin and double collar system. So there's one pin, one collar on each end, which can be a little bit finicky, but lucky for me, I was able to kind of get this dialed in really, really nicely. So with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and show you guys how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this wears beautifully. And you know, although I do have a 7.5-inch wrist, it's not like super flat and wide. It's actually quite round, as you guys can see. So it's not like my wrist is just super wide and accommodating for any old watch. I am definitely very self-conscious about, you know, the way things sit, the design, how they're going to wear. Of course, even when you get something like this as well proportioned and sized as it is, close to the camera lens, you're going to get some perspective distortion. It's going to seem a lot larger than it actually is. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame so you guys can still get a detailed look while just keeping it at a bit of a truer aspect ratio. And I have to say, this old watch from the early 2000s really holds up. Check that out. Look at the curvature, the angles. Whew. This is all on titanium as well, guys. So, I mean, that's just amazing. Just so ahead of its time. I mean, now titanium starting to become a little bit more popularized. But I have 3 neo vintage titanium mechanical Seikos that have really a lot of character to them. So I'll have to probably do an eventual episode where I kind of talk about that titanium trio. But for those of you that are fans of the channel, you might already know which other 2 watches I'm thinking of. But man, this is gorgeous. Look at the way that it lays. Also, you're getting a nice functional everyday type of milled clasp there. So this has a really nice taper. It goes from 20 millimeters down to about 17.7 millimeters, and then to a 20 millimeter clasp with 4 positions of manual micro adjustment. And you can see nicely signed there with the Brightz B, and it's just very clean. And it's very well articulated. Look at how interesting this multi-link setup is, guys. So essentially, they have kind of an alternating H and T link kind of shape there. And in between, it actually has really nice contours. So they're not just, you know, kind of a bunch of rounded off pieces. They contour and fit and glide around each other's contours, which I think is really cool, guys. So with that said, although there's no loom, which is probably the only thing that's kind of sad here, but again, this is more of a dedicated kind of everyday type of adventure / dressy piece. So yeah, that's the unfortunate trade-off, is Seiko's signature Lumibright isn't found here. But with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some loom shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay guys, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. And again, yeah, no loom, but one thing I always do like to work in is a bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And one thing you guys are going to see here is that enamel dial. Although it's taken on some character over the years, it is holding up. Look at how black that dial is. Look at the contrast of the bright white text. Beautifully applied there. Whew, that is gorgeous. And even if I get like a more direct type of reflection on here, check that. Ooh, that's actually kind of... That's kind of cool. Wow. Look at that. There's a little bit of softness. And it's more so, it's less the color and it's the texture of the enamel dial there. Really beautiful. And you're just seeing a little bit of that age come on the scene. So, but still, I mean, look how legible that is. There's no loom there. That's just with minimal light. You're going to get the black disappears. The white is nice and thick and very legible. So very cool. Of course, you know, then you have to try to get the light to also catch that little sliver of white that goes down the center line of the hands, which that might, you know, the dial might still be there, but then the hands could disappear. But again, this is with it static. You can see at different angles and whatnot. You know, the hands are going to pretty much be pretty available to your eye. The seconds hand, not so much, but hey, this isn't a dive watch, so it's not like it's important that you know that it's still running. But man, this thing is just gorgeous. And, you know, thank you guys for hanging out with me and just letting me gush about another Grail watch that again just kind of fits within the tapestry of what I've collected over the years. Closing thoughts on the wrist: the lightweight titanium construction has enough heft to still feel quite premium, and feels a lot like, let's say, something like an Alpinist on the wrist, right? A little lighter, of course, especially when you start thinking about the modern Pro Specs Alpinists. But yeah, I'd say Alpinist would probably still be the closest comparable, you know, thanks to its compact case dimensions. And then that really well articulated bracelet links, you know, those are awesome, and they add a lot of comfort. And then of course it's already comfortable because it's titanium, but the articulation on the bracelet links is really, really cool. And I just have to shout that out. I do appreciate that. In terms of model variants, there's actually a whole wide array of models within the Brightz cushion case lineup. So if you guys want to search those out, you know, you're more than welcome. There's some really cool variations. I really can't cover them all here. In terms of comparable models, it's tough to draw comparables with vintage and even neo vintage pieces, but I'd say in terms of a modern Seiko comparable, you know, especially one that I own, I'd say my SJE019 King Seiko with the 6L movement fills a similar space, right? It's more of an everyday dress watch, although it is definitely a dressy watch. It is built robust enough with the full bracelet and everything to where, yeah, it definitely is something you could wear every day. And it's, you know, another side of, oh, that looks like a really cool Japanese watch. This definitely is a different take on that. And this definitely has a bit more of a sporty feel versus the more kind of dressed up feel. And then also the era, right? The King Seiko is definitely going to be, you know, kind of that mid-century 50s, 60s vibe versus here. This definitely has that kind of more contemporary spin, which I think is cool. So bottom line for me, guys, the unique combination of specifications and design really make this Brightz a truly grail-worthy pursuit. The 90s and early 2000s neo-vintage space is so ripe with underappreciated gems. So from a time when brands were really looking to reinvigorate premium mechanical, you know, that whole market, right? Because it was after the quartz crisis was kind of all done. So I think it's great that they were just, you know, being more experimental and trying to get these really unique offerings out there. And this is a great one, you know, and it happens to be very elegant and titanium. And again, it's just such an odd combination of specs that really just come together to create something very, very special. So with that said, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.